Right. Myself and Chandra Salgado Kent both started doing this work down here about 11 years ago. I started in 2002, and we formed a collaborative group called Southwest between us and Ocean Blueprint and Echo Gecko and all the local community volunteers to help with the land-based work that we've been doing. And recently, this year, we formed GMR, which is a not-for-profit organisation to raise funding support to continue this work, because most of it's been done voluntarily. So I'll just go through why Geographe Bay is important, where we work, what species of whales we see, the range of research methods, and down the bottom there we get southern right whales, blue whales, humpbacks and minke whales, and some impacts that concern me about baleen whales. Whales are marine mammals. There's about 80 species of them, made into two groups, baleen whales and toothed whales. Most of the whales are toothed, dolphins, killer whales, sperm whales, and the many other species. They are warm-blooded, air-breathing. They have no hair, streamlined bodies, modifications, and really well-developed acoustic organs to make sound and receive sound. Baleen whales, which is the ones I'm going to be talking about, use baleen to sieve food from the water, and most of that food is of krill or small crustaceans, and that particular assemblage of invertebrates rely on plankton. Why is it important? I think these last three talks, which have been absolutely brilliant, have outlined so well the parks that we have in Geographe Bay, the Ngari and Geographe Bay Marine Parks. But in addition, in 2020, Geographe Bay and coastal areas north of Perth and south to around Eucla were considered and recently been accepted by the IUCN for important marine mammal areas, which is really, really good, because part of the work that we did went into that assessment. These couple of slides are sent from Chandra. She couldn't make it. She works up at ECU. She's a very busy woman. She now is the Regional Task Force Coordinator for the IUCN. And she was instrumental in doing the big workshop in 2020 with all the scientists from around Australia to assess all these different areas. This particular map that you can see here is the big orange, this area here is a pathway for blue whales, Indian Ocean blue whales. This inshore area that we see is the Geographe Bay to Eucla Shelf marine areas that are there for the huge diversity not only of whales but seals. There's Australian sea lions and New Zealand fur seals. There's a whole lot of habitat that Tim's talked about as well. And you can see this particular area for the blue whales is being put there because of work done, satellite tagging and tracking of blues, pygmy blues that we've got. We've found that their breeding area is in the Indonesian archipelago and the Banda Sea. And they go there, they're sort of over from March to around about now, where they head south, and that's why we're seeing them now in Geographe Bay. And then they head out into the Southern Ocean, feeding, and over to the Bonnie Upwelling over here. New Zealand's got another population, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So the things that we use for the analysis of all the data that we collect, photo ID, we've got theodolites, we've got acoustic loggers, and recently we've been using drones. And Dr. Angela Ricalda, she's done the acoustic ecology of whales in Geographe Bay, and that PhD's just finished, and she's got a few papers out. Chandra comes down. She used to work with CMST at Curtin Uni, and putting these loggers in since about 2011, on and off. We missed a few years, but they used to go out near the Swan Wreck and are recording all ocean sounds, including calls from whales. So we work at Point Piquet for the land-based work here in Geographe Bay. I'll let this play. This will give you an idea of the species that we see. This was put together by Blair Ranford. He's one of the guys that works under my research permit to use the drones, and got 3 other people and myself. Point Piquet is here. We monitor here, and there's southern right whales and humpbacks. We sit on the platform 12 hours a day, monitoring for now 5 months. We've got a whole roster of really keen and committed volunteers from around the southwest and from Perth. That's a blue whale coming up to breed, and this is a little minke whale. Not many, we don't see many of these little guys. I first started taking an interest in whales. I've actually got an addiction to them. It's a really good one. I just love being with them and learning about them. And I first started in the mid-80s in Shark Bay, taking some photos, and then went through to the whale watching in Perth and was working on those boats, just collecting data, photographing humpbacks, the tails and the laterals, the southern rights, the head. They've got a series of white callosities on the head that we use for patterning, and blue whales have got this particular mottled pattern and a dorsal fin. However, in 2016 we started using drones, and that changed. That's a ball changer for us. And you can see for humpbacks, it helps us define compositions, pod composition and their interactions. For southern right whales, we can use these callosities in one photograph, not a side photograph, which is really good. And these photos will now be analysed and matched to find out their residence time in Geographe Bay. And blue whales here, they are probably the hardest to determine how many whales in a group, because they hardly ever come up together. So you think you've got one, and then half an hour later you can see 3 footprints and then 4 blows. Now we can get the drones over them and work out the compositions pretty much straight away. For southern right whales, I did a talk at AMSA in 2019 about our work with the southern rights to match individuals using these callosities, and you can see the marks here on the lip and the islands and the bonnet and the combing are all different. These are actually different whales, even though they look the same. So we need to be able to get good vertical shots of individuals and then go through a matching process using Lightroom. I'll just let you watch this. This is a single adult southern right, minding its own business, having a nice quiet rest. It's actually moving. They do this a lot in shallow water, and all of a sudden something out of the sun comes towards them. 3 bottlenose dolphins. Dolphins love doing this to whales. Some of the data that were collected from 2009 shows that southern rights are frequently sighted, mainly in August and September, for most years, except for 2018, where we had this extremely large pulse of whales and sightings. We also took the opportunity to monitor which females and calves were staying in the area. So what I was saying about before with photographs, we had to photograph the female as many times as we could see them on a daily basis, and we had some of them staying for a week and one pair stayed for 3 weeks. And you can see in blue, that's the females and calves, and the orange is the unaccompanied single adults, like that one that was disturbed by the dolphins. We want to determine the residency time, how long they stay. We use Lightroom, and we've just secured some funding from NEST, which is one of the hubs that Tim was talking about, to at 2019, 2020 and 21 southern right whale data. So in addition, now the drones we've found are even more useful. There's a guy here, Ian West, who's been working on adapting a LiDAR system and writing 25,000 lines of code to process them so that we can actually measure accurately all species of whales. And it's really important to do that now, given impacts on changing climate and prey distribution, which is concerning me. So this is a female southern right here, and it's calf, and Ian's done it so that we can actually use the video, and we can do stop frames and do measurements and then get a whole suite of them together. We do that with the blue whales as well. We need a lot of images for the blues because they're so huge. If you like to have a chat to Ian, he can see you later on. Also, the interaction between humans and whales is really important. Southern rights, as you can see from these dolphins, would be easily scared away by people on jet skis and so forth, which is, we worked with DGCA really closely this season and made a big difference to that. There's another movie here. This is consistent southern right nursing behaviour. This is Splash, the big one's the female, and Dash is the little one. And they were the two that stayed for 3 weeks. And she'll just sit there for hours, and the little calf will just, when she gets hungry, just go down and have a bit of a drink, and then get frisky, start jumping around, and then they might move to a different bay, and that's how they are. That's what they do on the south coast, all along Australia's coastline. The Conservation Management Plan is expiring this year, and it'll be rewritten for the next 10 years, and we want to try and get this information out so they can access it and put it into that plan. It's a long, slow process. With these recent aerial survey data on the south coast, there's aerial surveys done for southern right numbers every year for 30 years, which started by John Bannister from the museum. And last year they had the first big drop in numbers, and no one really knows what's going on, but in the southern hemisphere there's real concern with southern rights because in South Africa and Australia and South America the numbers that used to come in there aren't, and we're not too sure what's going on. So this data will go into, hopefully, Geographe Bay classified as a small established aggregation area, and the criteria with that was having 2 or 3 females and calves staying for more than a week in the area, and we've been able to show that. Blue whales. This is just a summary result. All this is preliminary analysis with the graphs that I'm going to show you. So there's 7 distinct acoustic populations that have been found in the Indian Ocean, and by that all whales make sounds, and blue whales make an extremely loud, powerful sound, but it's sub-audible for humans. But they all are different, and the most recent one was found this year. That map I was showing you, the West Australian pygmy blue whales go up and down the coast. This new one is a new population that crosses over that from southern Indonesia with a different call. So the known breeding areas is the Indonesian archipelago, like I was telling you, based on the satellite tagging that have been done from the Perth Canyon and Exmouth. And Perth Canyon is the main area. There's another one on the southeast Victorian coast called the Upwelling, which relies on big winds blowing up nutrient water onto the shelf on which the krill feed and which the blue whales go to feed. My colleague Pete Gill has done his PhD on that particular system. We've actually got photo ID matching between here and there, so we know it's the same population. And it is important. Geographe Bay is a very important migration corridor. These are the numbers that we've seen since 2003-04 on a yearly basis. And you can see the numbers are around about between 100 to nearly 300, which was 2020. Blair also took this beautiful shot. This goes for about 15 seconds. A single, we thought, blue whale, pygmy blue, probably about 22 metres. They just swim apparently really slowly, but some of them can do 10 knots. Surfacing a couple of times. These are endangered species. We know very little about them, just that they actually come, a portion of the population comes through Geographe Bay like all those other species. We do not have, we do not have the whole population coming through this area. It just seems to be a really important aggregation area and breeding area. And all of a sudden, this little calf comes up. So in that respect, we could have just missed that. You know, so we're probably underrepresenting the numbers that we see of blue whales especially. And humpbacks, you can see there's 3 different species. Humpbacks in red. In 2018 we saw 4,700 from Point PK for the whole season, and that has been a steady increase. In 2019 and since then, there's something going on. For the same amount of effort, the numbers have dropped quite dramatically, especially this year. Blue whales are down here, and the green is the southern right, so there's proportionally a lot less of those that we see. When you look at humpback whale sightings by month, a really important, so we've got 2 things happening. There's 3 years now, those numbers have dropped, and it's still dropping, and we don't know why. But also, we've got purple is November, green is October. These are the number of the whales that we see. Red is September. We're starting to see more in September, and even August. So this pretty much demonstrates that we have either apparent drop in the numbers and apparent shift in the migration for humpbacks on the west coast. I've been in contact with people on the east coast, and they have said that they found a change in the earlier migration as well. But some have noticed the numbers have dropped, but they all think that that's gone. They've moved offshore into the Eastern Australian current. And what Tim was saying with the Lewin current, it's the same thing on the east coast, a warm south-blowing current. So it may be that that's where they are, but for all those years we've had a certain proportion coming in, and now they're not. Also, in addition, the low humpback numbers have been noticed by the whale watching industry, especially this year, and in Broome especially. I talked to people up there, and they had to stop it early. And these guys are saying, what the hell's going on, Chris? Where are the whales? The federal government is contemplating delisting humpbacks from the threatened species list, but I think and suggest that they should delay that until a population assessment has been done. The last one was 2008, and Chandra was involved in that, and that was done by aerial surveys across the shelf from Northwest Cape. And it's a really, really all-encompassing from the northern migration until the southern migration. Most of the whales, the humpback whales, will be seen and were seen, and that was with their population estimate of around about 30,000 in 2008-9, at an increase of about 10%, so there would have been heaps of humpbacks now. But I think, given these trends that are starting to show up on both coasts, maybe we should be getting a new assessment done ASAP. Most of these whale species have adapted to large temperature ranges when you think about it. They all go into the Southern Ocean, some down to the ice and some to the subtropical convergence where they feed, where the temperatures vary from 2 degrees to 10, and they go to the tropical areas to have their calves, and that's the reason they do it. The calves are put into warm water, not 2-degree water. But I think there's more to it. So this is a satellite image of the Lewin current I've got from the bomb site. You can see how diverse it is, and it is offshore. Now Tim was saying, in that deep water. Maybe we also need to do that, perhaps aerial surveys of here during the season to see the proportion of whales offshore compared to what we see. So climate change, I'm glad you guys are talking about it because I'm really worried about it. The temperature's going up in the ocean and the land globally. This is the anomaly, temperature anomaly in Australia, and it mirrors pretty much what's happening globally for the land. Carbon dioxide, this is 2017 or 2018, and it's now 420. This particular one is from the carbon dioxide station in Hawaii. That's the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, that's the carbon dioxide in the water, and this is the pH of the water, showing it's becoming slightly more acidic. This is the acceleration of the ocean heat globally. This is the Arctic ice extent, the multi-year ice. This is the Arctic and the Antarctic sea ice. In May 2007, there was a paper presented at the IWC 59th meeting examining impacts of climate change in 2007. They talked about changes in sea temperature and chemistry, declining salinity, sea level rise, rapid loss of polar habitats, and more importantly, the decline in krill population in key areas being dependent on sea ice coverage, and that are the prime food source for many whales. And krill populations depend on productivity from phytoplankton and zooplankton. They held a meeting the next year, where a paper by Tonin et al. In summary, this paper, they talked about under 2 degree global warming scenario, that the frontal zones, which are critical whale habitat, and that's the subtropical zone, for example, on around about there, around the Antarctic, where two oceans meet, and there's a lot of productivity there, where some of the whales go there to feed. So migratory whales have to travel further, and the effects include longer and changed migration times, increased energy, etc. I did have a look at, just a few days ago, for these three papers, 2017, their work showed altering of the structure and the function of phytoplankton communities in the Southern Ocean, and Tullett in 2019 used this incredible model I've never heard of that links krill and whale population dynamics with climate change. The models predict negative future impacts in climate change on krill and all whale species, although the magnitude and impacts differ. And Lin et al. In 2021 said species richness and evenness decline with an increase in SST. Less diverse plankton assemblages were observed in waters with higher SST, or deep mixed layers. It's really important, and we don't know. Thanks very much for everyone. I'd like to thank these volunteers that have been crucial in collecting the data from Point Peacup. Ian West, Blair Ramford, Rod Peterson and Frank Eckler, who've been doing the drone imaging for the last 4 years, and Brodie Ilston, who did her honours on the Southern Right Whales Shore, on which we're building, and Nat Charters, with whom we work with very well, the local whale watching industry. And I'll just leave you with this